Writers. What will we do without them? They are the sources of all of our movies and shows. They are the people that entertain us. And I think that it's deeply important that a writer should be compensated properly, right? One would think that they are compensated properly, but it doesn't seem like they are at all. But there was a tweet that was shared by the Writers Guild of America. Let's give it a look-see, shall we? Yes, we shall. So this is from the Writers Guild of America West. Says WGA members have authorized a strike by 97.85%. Writers are ready for a deal from the studios that allows writers to share in the success of the content they create and build a stable life. So 97.85% authorized a strike. And even the mayor of Burbank stands with the workers. So this is what's happening. And there's a lot that goes meaning for this, especially when it comes to the content that we watch. That may be shows on, you could be watching Hulu, you could be watching Netflix, you could be watching ABC, CNN, CBS, sorry. Kind of a Freudian slip there, right? You could be watching on TNN. Hell, you can be watching shows on Cartoon Network. You could be watching something from Universal. You could be watching something from Disney Pixar. You'd be watching a whole host of different things, and somebody had to write that script. Somebody had to write that episode. And are they being fairly compensated for the work that they do? Because we all know that these studios and these corporations make hand over fist day in and day out. Let's go to the article. And this is an article out of Vanity Fair. It says if writer's strike hits Hollywood, everybody loses. This is from Natalie Jarvie out of Vanity Fair. This came out yesterday. Okay, it says in January 2008, 8 weeks after film and TV scribes grabbed picket signs and ground Hollywood to a halt, Conan O'Brien returned to his NBC late night show, sans writers, but having acquired a thick red striped beard. It has been a very tough time not only for our show, but for a lot of people in the entertainment industry. He said, good people right now are out of work and possibly worse. With all the late night shows off the air, Americans have been forced to read books and occasionally even speak to one another, which has been horrifying. He then launched into a show that featured an uninspired tribute to his new facial hair and a segment in which he timed how long he could spend his wedding ring on his desk. It wasn't the most scintillating entertainment, but as O'Brien himself acknowledged, we have no writers and we have a 1 hour show to do every night. So now it's 15 years later, and it says they're on the verge of another strike. It says audience could be in store for another period of strike beards, reruns, and actual human interaction. The Writers Guild of America, which is in the middle of negotiating a new contract with studios and streamers, have received overwhelming support from its nearly 12,000 members to strike a deal if deal isn't in place May 1st. and things aren't looking promising. Writers are fighting for higher pay, arguing that they haven't seen a fair share of the spoils from the streaming wars at a moment of relative austerity for entertainment conglomerates, which in recent months have cut budgets and laid off thousands of workers. So that's what's going on there. This is kind of interesting. I saw here. It says, even so, the 2007 strike did produce some winners. Donald Trump and Nikki Haley said, and 2023 strike would do the same. And there are some, I'm sorry, and there are some who have more to lose than there is a work stoppage. So this actually goes into who wins and who loses. So who wins? Writers. The WGA is fighting a long-term changes that could make significant improvements to writers' pay and working conditions, including an increase in minimum compensation in streaming residuals, a payment similar to a royalty, and new policies around the use of smaller writers' rooms known as mini rooms. There's also an effort to get ahead of burgeoning technologies like artificial intelligence that threaten writers' jobs. Talk to writers right now, and they'll say that streaming, with its short episode orders and long production times, have made it harder for them to build stable careers. The current fight is to safeguard ourselves from it getting worse. But a work stoppage could have devastating impact on the short term. If writers' rooms shut down, jobs will dry up, and there is no guarantee that the same opportunities will be available when work resumes. I'm going to stop right there. Remember when we used to have mostly scripted television? What happened after that writer's strike? Boom. Reality TV. Real Housewives, the Kardashians, Celebrity Apprentice, or the Apprentice. All these different things came out, especially during a writer's strike. Why? Because you need writers to write scripts. If you don't have scripts, then what are you going to do? Then you just depend on the people who are, you depend on the talent, but the talent really isn't talent. They just are, they're just personalities. And so now if you look, what's dominating a lot, especially a lot of cable shows, is reality TV. Go on Bravo, go on E, go on VH1, go on all these different channels. TLC. TLC is supposed to be the learning channel. What are you learning? Right? All these channels now have reality TV. How many Real Housewives do we have? You have Real Housewives of Atlanta, Real Housewives of New York, Real Housewives of the Potomac, Real Housewives of the OC, Real Housewives. Look, next thing you know, they're going to have Real Housewives of Appalachia. That's coming up next. Next thing you know, we're going to have Real Housewives of Lake County, Florida. Real Housewives of Arkansas. You know, it's just crazy. But that's all they have. They just put them out there. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, what do we got to do here? Okay, well, let's have people who are living in Jersey on the shore, and let's just follow their life. Okay, all we need is a producer, a director, and a cameraman. That's it. No writers. And just let them ruin their own lives for all of our entertainment. And so that's what happened. It says the 2007 strike led to years of friction between the writers and the studios, and some workers chose to leave the industry entirely, but many felt that the concessions won made it all worthwhile. Now, it says studios are set to also benefit. It says Netflix CEO Ted Sarandos and Warner Brothers Discovery CEO David Zaslav have both said that they don't want a strike to happen. And it is true that a lengthy strike could significantly derail their project timelines, But don't be surprised if they're already hard at work finding out how to come out on top if there is one. In 2007, the studios took advantage of a strike to cancel underperforming shows and axe several dozen overall deals with writers and producers, and several sources expect them to do the same if there's another strike. You got to remember, every single show that gets axed, these are makeup artists that are out of work, camera people, operators that are out of work. You have, set design crews that may be out of work. You have producers that may be out of work. You have so many people that are out of work whenever a show gets discontinued or canceled, or if a movie that was set to start gets axed. These are working people that were working on these shows to bring them to you. And so this is basically these corporations trimming the fat, so to speak. Because for them, it's about profitability. Never mind the shows that were actually really good, but they weren't making as much money. How many of you in the chat, back in, dare I say, the golden years of Netflix, used to watch a show called Sense8? Some of you guys know. Sense8 was a show that was amazing at its time. Hey, Kit. Good to see you. All right. Thank you so very much. Sense8 was I don't want to say the word revolutionary, but it was a very captivating show. Here's the premise. So you have 8 people that were all born on the same day that all share a mental link around the world. And they all could link each other in mind when it came to performing different actions. One was a police officer. I know. One was part of a mafia. You had one that was a club DJ. You had another that was great driver, an amazing driver. You had another one that was a kick-ass martial artist. And you had another one that was an actor. One that was a computer hacker. And then the last one, the 8th one, was a pharmacist. And so they would use each other's tools and go into each other's brains in order to perform certain actions. And they were also fighting against somebody that was trying to take them out because that person thought that they were a threat to humanity. And it was just a beautiful show. Gorgeous show. And it was actually pretty, it was pretty progressive, because one of the people in the 8 were actually one of the people was trans. Another one of the people were, was gay. And then people, and there was only 2 white guys out of the entire 8. One was Wolfgang, and he was in Germany, and I forgot the cop's name, but he was a Chicago cop. They were the only 2 white guys, and then one of the only other white people were one of the ladies. She was a DJ, and then Noemi, she was trans. Everybody else was either from Africa, different parts of Asia, or Latin America. Yeah. So it was very progressive, and set in various different parts of the world. Like, they were on location, no green screen. It was, oh my God. And just the visuals of the show. It was beautiful. Netflix axed it. After the 2nd season, they said no more. There was a campaign to get it back on the air. People were, sharing hashtags and demanding Netflix to bring back Sense8. Under pressure, Netflix decided to do a final movie instead of bringing it back, which it didn't really live up to the actual 2 seasons of the show. And so you got to remember, these are working people. And when people think about the shows that get axed, they think about just the actors. It's not just the actors, right? It's all the people that work behind the scenes that also are working to provide for themselves and their families that people don't really take into consideration. So, yeah. So it says reality TV producers are also some of the people that will actually fare well. It says you can thank the 1988 writer's strike for cops. Thanks, I guess. And the 2007 strike for the Celebrity Apprentice. This time around, cash-strapped networks and streamers aren't expected to fuel quite the same gold rush, but producers in the space are still hoping to benefit from any disruption to the prestige TV pipeline. Says one veteran reality TV producer, quote, I hate to say this because a lot of my friends are in the scripted world, but it is an enormous opportunity. Says international producers, goes into how they may benefit in other guilds. But this goes into who loses in the writer's strike. Says LA's economy. The writer's strike that lasts more than just a few weeks could all but completely halt production in Los Angeles and other major entertainment hubs like New York, Georgia, and New Mexico. Any production where scripts aren't complete or the writers are needed on set would be forced to go dark. That means actors, camera operators, assistants, makeup artists, prop masters would immediately find themselves without work. The DGA has warned its members that they should continue to work through a strike, but they can only do that if their productions aren't reliant on writers. As in Los Angeles alone, some 150,000 people consider themselves employees of the motion picture or sound recording industries. Nearly 15,000 more identify as artists, writers, or producers, according to the Los Angeles County Economic Development Corporation. The same group previously estimated that the Hollywood strike could cost the local economy more than $3 billion, including $772 million lost in wages. Alex Medina says we can comfortably say that the walkout will cost local economy more than just lost wages for writers and production workers. As businesses in the industry supply chain, including caterers and equipment rental houses, and the ripple effect of reduced spending by workers in the industry in its supply chain will result in additional revenue losses in our region. Meaning, even people who work in places like restaurants, even people who work in dog grooming, people who, so many different people will end up losing out, because if a lot of people are no longer at work because the writers aren't going to work, if the writers don't show up, nobody works. Pretty much. That's how it is. It's just like at a restaurant. If the food delivery truck that delivers all the raw foods to the restaurant doesn't show up, the cooks don't work, the servers don't work, the hosts don't work, the managers don't work. Nobody works, right? By the way, this is why when we talk about a general strike, we actually talk about the people who drive the trucks, as well as man the boats, man the trains, all that. So, anyway, so like I was saying, this is why the writers need to be there in order for people to work. But the thing is that these people also need to spend money in their local economies. And if they're not working, that means they're not making money. If they're not making money, then the local economy tanks. And LA is also a tourist place. And so they're not making money. They're just relying basically on tourism. Let me continue. It was about late night hosts. It says late night shows, which are often written mere hours before they tape, are some of the first that will be forced to shut down if there's a strike. That could mean no new episodes for The Tonight Show with starring Jimmy Fallon, or Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, and Saturday Night Live might have to pre-write or scrap nearly its entire May 6th show featuring Pete Davidson. And so this affected back in 2007, it affected David Letterman, Jay Leno, Jimmy Kimmel, Jon Stewart, and Stephen Colbert. And so, not that I care that much about, like, for instance, Jimmy Fallon or John Oliver or the cast of Saturday Night Live that much, but I care more about the people behind the camera, the people in the background, because they are the ones that are going to suffer. But the thing is that these writers, they absolutely need to go on strike, because if they're being treated like crap, then they need to go on strike. They, because they can't, allow themselves to be continuously exploited just to produce shows while these corporations make a lot of money off of them. That's why it's important for them to go on strike. But the strike will mean a lot of closures for people. But in hoping, a lot of people will say, all right, well, if you guys don't stand with them, then we won't stand with you. That's what I'm hoping for. And of course, audiences, they're not going to get shows. We're just going to get a lot of reruns and one of the things that I also wanted to show as well was these corporations are making a lot of money. And what happens with these corporations, unfortunately for us, is that as they continue down the pike, what do corporations do in a capitalist system? Capitalism requires infinite growth on a planet with finite resources. So because they require this infinite growth, that means that more profit needs to go to them and their shareholders. And like I said before, I think a couple shows ago, what do they need to do in order to increase profit? They need to either raise their prices, cut workers, right? Which is what a lot of these studios have done. Or they need to absorb other companies so that they can grow from their audiences or from their customers. The third part of this, the third piece of this, is what we like to call monopolization. Is it a monopoly by the strict definition of it? No. But that's how these corporations operate. What they do is they will shrink it down to just a few companies, but they'll stop before they make it into one, just so that they can say, okay, we're going to keep this part of the market. We'll share this market, and we'll just have it all amongst us. Got it? Good. And so therefore, they can raise their prices as much as they want. They can treat people like crap, not just people that are working for them like crap, but they treat you like crap. Remake anyone? It's cheaper. It's cheaper to do a remake than it is to do an original script. Think about it. You already have the script. All you got to do is just make it live action. That's all you got to do. So now you're typically making more money from a remake than you would writing an original script. Plus, there's no risk involved. What? There's a new Little Mermaid coming out. All they did was a race swap, and boom, and it made it live action. That was it. Because it's cheaper. Because it's more profitable. Now, I'm cool with having an Ariel as being black. I don't care about that. What I care about is the fact that they are screwing over audiences as well by saying, oh, we'll just throw this classic at you and just do a little bit of tweaking, and then boom, there you go. Take it and shut up. Now give us your money. That's basically what it is. That's how I honestly feel. They're just throwing stuff at us. How many Transformers were there? We damn near watched Michael Bay blow up shit 5, 6, 7 different ways. But every time it's like, oh, well, they're doing a remake of this, they're doing a remake of that. Like, yes, are those of us who are millennials especially, are we nostalgic? Yes. Are we that nostalgic? No. We want new stuff too. We still want new stuff. Here is the strike declaration. This is from the WGA. It says strike authorization vote results. It says the results of the WGA strike authorization vote are now in. The results of the WGA strike authorization, yes, is 9,020, which is 97.85%. The no's were 198. I wonder who the no's are. Total ballots cast, 9,218, which is 78.79% of eligible WGA members. These results set a new record for both turnout and percentage of support in a strike authorization vote. Our membership has spoken. Writers have expressed our collective strength, solidarity, and demand for meaningful change in overwhelming numbers. Armed with this undeniable demonstration of unity and resolve, we continue to work at negotiating table to achieve a fair contract for all writers. But here's who they are negotiating with, though. Here's who. And I want you guys to take this into consideration. I want you guys to look closely at this. These are the corporations that own our media. Make sure to give me a like, guys. And if you guys haven't subscribed, make sure to subscribe. So starting off at the top left, we have News Corp, which is basically Rupert Murdoch. So this has changed a little bit since the creating of this. So I'm going to make a couple corrections. So News Corp owns Fox News, Fox Sports. Wait, what is this way? National, I think it's not National Geographic. What is that? Is that DreamWorks? But that's pretty much it. They don't own a lot of these anymore. FX, National Geographic, 20th Century Fox, Fox Movie, Hulu, DreamWorks. That's now all owned by Disney. Disney now owns over half of what Fox used to own. Disney brought it up. Then you have Time Warner. Time Warner is, of course, CNN, Entertainment, Southern Living, Time Life, HBO, AOL, TNT, TBS, People. That's Time Warner. Comcast. Why is Hulu in two places? What in the world? You don't need Hulu in all those places. Anyway. It says Comcast owns NBC, Universal, Sci-Fi, Telemundo, USA, the Weather Channel, all these different ones. Focus. That's what they own. Sony here is Columbia Game Show Network. I forgot the names of some of these, and it's kind of blurred. TriStar. And then you have Viacom, which owns Paramount, Spike, BET. I thought BET was a black-owned station. Wasn't BET supposed to be black-owned? Why is it owned by Viacom? Who owns Viacom? Black-owned my ass. Also, Comedy Central, MTV, VH1, Nickelodeon. So that's owned by Viacom. Then you have Disney. Oh, boy. Mickey Mouse. Disney owns ABC, NBC. I'm sorry, ABC, ESPN. I'm sorry. A&E, Pixar, Lucasfilms, Touchstone, Marvel. Now they own 20th Century Fox and National Geographic and Fox Entertainment, Hulu. So this is the conglomerates that they basically say, we're not going to step on each other's toes, but we're just going to own it between all of us. And don't be surprised if one of these big corporations tried to buy up a whole nother one. Don't be surprised if Disney says to Sony, hey, we want to buy you. Comcast tried to buy Disney a few years back. Remember that? They tried to buy them for, I think it was what? I think it was like $50 billion. Disney laughed in their faces. Disney was like, $50 billion? Is that all you got? That's what happened. So that's who they are really having to go up against when it comes to the negotiating table. Cobra Commander says Disney is Alien versus Predator. All right. So I have a video that I want to show and I want to react to. You guys are going to see this. And this is out of More Perfect Union. They're also talking about the writer's strike.
Production studios. At the center of that fight is something called residuals, one of the most important ways that writers get paid.
Residuals are payments that are made every quarter by the companies to the writers for the content that they create.
The WGA contracts that currently exist were built upon a model where the content providers generated the revenue through AdSense. So if I write an episode of television that re-airs over and over and over again, every time that episode re-airs, the content provider generates revenue, and a little piece of that revenue gets shared with everyone that contributed to the creation of it.
So did you guys catch that? So these shows basically will make revenue based on the commercial sales, right? These are how the networks make their money. They will air commercials. Like, for instance, you get a Febreze commercial. How much money does Febreze have to pay, or the parent company of Febreze have to pay, let's say, Viacom or Disney for that particular show? They have to pay so much for that time slot. And so then when they pay for that time slot, then some of that money goes to the studio that helped create that show. Then the studio disseminates that money to the people who work on that show. Writers are part of that cast. So writers, because they are literally the source of the material that the show is based on, then they get a pretty significant cut, or at least they did, so that they could work and continuously write for the show and be the creators of the show. Because you have the show creator, then you have the writers, and sometimes the show creator is also one of the writers, sometimes, or they consult with the show creator. So that's how it works.
Now, their revenue is made almost exclusively through monthly or annual subscriptions. So there is no re-airing. People can watch what they want when they want, which means that we're not getting the same residuals that we once would have.
So as far as what they're getting, because there's no advertisements, so you don't have these big name advertisers that cut into a commercial break and they will advertise their stuff, and then they pay this money out for the writers to get their money. And so now, because they had to pay these writers, they don't have to pay them anymore. Not like that anymore. So now they're cutting the writers' pay, instead of actually paying writers what they were before on network TV and cable TV. Because now the money's going directly to the studios.
What I'm accustomed to as a broadcast writer, as a residual, like $20,000 for an episode of TV, in streaming, I just got a check for the same project for $23. And what's happening a lot is that at a certain point, after a certain couple of years, the streamer has to continue paying residuals. And instead of doing that, they much rather just pull the product from their app. And so that's what we're seeing a lot of. Content that we create 5 years from now, completely gone, and we are not getting any residual compensation out of it.
So if you have a favorite show that you loved that you can't find anywhere anymore, it's because those content providers don't want to pay the creators of the show for the right to air.
Remember when HBO Max removed its very own Emmy award-winning hit Westworld from its streaming library? Hate to break it to you, that was over residuals. Another issue at the heart of the writer's contract dispute is something called mini rooms, which is basically a cute way to refer to writers' rooms that essentially do the same work with a fraction of the workers in a fraction of the time to turn over a larger profit.
Historically speaking, a writer's room was generally only constructed for a program that had been ordered to series, that you were guaranteed to see at least the first few episodes of on television. It meant that the content providers spent millions of dollars on a pilot episode. They watched the pilot episode, said, we love this, let's order it to series, and a writer's room was created. Increasingly, they are saying, you know what, let's not spend those millions of dollars on a pilot. Let's spend significantly less money on a number of mini rooms where we will hire a smaller number of writers per project, and we will order 2 or 3 or 4, however many scripts without actually shooting any of it. And then we can look and read those scripts and decide whether or not this is a season of television we want to invest tens or hundreds of millions of dollars in.
And
this is why a lot of shows suck now. This is why. Because They don't want to actually invest in anything that's worthwhile. And they're just giving us cheap entertainment now. Just throwing out whatever's cheap just so they can make more money back on it. And so, yeah, that's what's going on. Jeez Louise.
And what writers were seeing a lot of were the streamers were only going to pay weekly compensation to all writers, regardless of level. So you could be a co-executive producer with 10 years of experience who might have sold some development, so you have a proven track record. You could be making the same as a staff writer who this is their very first job right out the gate.
We should be able to say, hey, I'm making more money now than I was making 10 years ago, because that's how careers work in every industry. You don't work the same job for 10 years and make less money than you did when you first started doing it. And that's what's happening to us.
It's fine if they want to hire us weekly on shows that have not been ordered to series yet, that they're just collecting scripts for. But we need to be compensated in the same way that we were compensated when we were writing shows that they were putting on the air. It's the same time and creative energy being put into those scripts. The fact that these content providers might be choosing not to make them doesn't mean that we're working less hard on them and that we should be paid less for the creation of them.
At the end of
So ultimately, this is what happens when the corporate dictator dictates to the artist what they want versus the artist dictating to the corporation what they want. Because it's no longer artists having control, artists being the directors, the writers, the actors, and then the people who are, you know, the people who are working behind the camera. They do not dictate anymore, even if they actually have a better outlook on what is better for the audience and which also is better for them financially. No, you have suits making decisions. I'll be honest with you. This is one of the reasons why the DCEU has actually not been very good. This is why people look at, you know, movies like Batman versus Superman and Wonder Woman in 1984 as like, what in the hell is this? Because you have these corporations making decisions and it's not coming out very well. So that's why everything sucks now. I mean, things used to be better because writers actually got compensated more. If you worked in that industry, you actually got compensated pretty decently. But they're cutting costs now. Here we go. It's all about the money.
the day, this all comes down to greed. In 2000, the combined entertainment operating profits of the production studios was $5 billion. By 2019, with the advent of streaming and the addition of companies like Netflix in the mix, they were up to $30 billion. Streaming has boosted corporate profits, but writers are actually earning less now.
Makes you think a little bit when it comes to having like Disney Plus, Netflix, Peacock, or any of these others. It just makes you think differently. It's just like, man, you know, these corporations are making more money, but the people are actually getting shafted more. This is why this capitalist system continuously screws over everybody. It's not just the workers that are behind the scenes. It's also those of us who watch this entertainment. Is it really entertainment anymore? I find myself watching YouTube way more than I find myself watching Netflix or any of these other streaming platforms. I really do. Like, I'm not watching that much. It's like, why in the world am I giving them my money over to these people? Because the thing is that they're really not serving me anything worthwhile. And it's always a surprise when, oh my God, this show on Netflix is actually really good. Why do we have to go through that? Right? At first, it was great because we didn't have to be forced to pay for cable and watch all these different shows that we didn't want to watch. You know, basically, it's cable a la carte. But now you look at it, these capitalists, man, they just ruin everything, man. They ruin it all, man. Anyhow,
it is absolutely undeniable that the streaming platforms are generating mountains of money through their subscription base. What they're choosing to do with that money is an entirely different question.
There's this misconception outside of Hollywood that writers are bougie, six-figure people who live in palaces in Beverly Hills, and why are they complaining about what more compensation? And that's going to be far from the truth.
The fight that the writers in this industry are battling is probably not very different from the fight that they or friends or relatives have been facing with the consolidation of power and money. There are fewer and fewer corporations holding more and more of the purse strings and protecting the coffers and the coins more and more greedily. And that's certainly not unique to our industry.
So that's the point. That's the point. Heartlands Media Kit says Star Wars has gone under when Disney bought it. How they handled the Republic has let me get to the point. Palpatine did nothing wrong. Ella. Oh gosh. Yeah. Like they have look, I'll put it to you this way. When Disney bought Lucasfilm, sorry. When Disney bought Lucasfilm, all they did was just do a remake of the original trilogy. That was it. They just remade the original trilogy. Do you want to know why people like myself? I love the prequels. Like, people look at me like I'm crazy. Like, oh, you like the prequels? Yeah, I love the prequels. Because they were literally directed by George Lucas. And it wasn't a remake of anything. It was him actually telling the story that he had already wrote before Episode 4, before A New Hope. He just never put it on screen. But he wrote it years ago, and he made it into a movie because people wanted, because there was a fever, they wanted more cowbell. They actually wanted people, people actually want to see what happened. Like, what happened to Vader? How did Vader come to be who he is? Which was an interesting story. But then, he already had episodes 7, 8, and 9 written. And then they bought it from him. I think it was $3 billion. And so once they bought it from him, he was like, okay, I'm going to be consulted on this, right? Disney said, yeah, we don't need you. So it's like, you mean to tell me that your creative consultant for Star Wars could be George Lucas, but you said no? So this is why the sequel trilogy is crap. It is crap. Blame Kathleen Kennedy. I mean, they ruined it. Heartland says now they are doing new stories and stuff that was already made years ago. Yeah. To me, I haven't got to see any of the animated shows, but I did see The Mandalorian first 2 seasons, and the fact that it was, produced by Dave Filoni and, oh my God, I forgot his name. He also directed the first Iron Man. But yeah, Dave Filoni, from what I've learned, was actually an apprentice under George Lucas. Jon Favreau, yes. Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, yeah. So, because Dave Filoni especially was under the wing of George Lucas, Dave Filoni knew exactly what George Lucas wanted. So he basically just did what George Lucas would have done in regards to that show. This is why that show's a hit show. This is why The Mandalorian, at least for the first 2 seasons, I haven't got to see the 3rd season yet, is pretty good. So, yeah, they're ridiculous. Let's finish this off.
We're making less money now than we were making 10 years ago, and the industry is shifting to prioritize streaming, and none of our pay structure or the amount of money that we're paid reflects those changes. They are treating everything like TV operates the same as it did 10 years ago, and I think everyone, even viewers, know that's just not true. The industry needs to catch up.
If push comes to shove, a strike is incredibly important to show these companies that we mean business and that we won't stand for them trying to take our livelihoods in Hollywood.
So this is why I stand with the workers, the writers, because they absolutely they should not be shafted like this. And really, the people who we need to point at are the executives at the top of these corporations. The executives at the top of these corporations. The Time Warners, the Viacoms, the Disneys, the News Corps, the Sonys, Comcasts. These are the ones that are really screwing over the workers that really, honestly, I'm of the opinion that well, let me ask you guys this, because they do have unions. What would it mean if, let's say hypothetically, Disney was worker owned? What would it mean? Because from what it looks like to me is that they would actually be run better than these for-profit companies, these conglomerates. I mean, dare I say, we probably get some movies that actually aren't propaganda. We wouldn't get movies like Rambo and what's that movie name? I'm forgetting stuff lately. Don't do drugs, kids. Top Gun. Oh God, I can't believe they actually remade that. Did a sequel to Top Gun. That's crazy. That's just all propaganda, right? And so what would happen if the money was more spread out among the workers and not not just the workers at the top? No. even the people who are part of the custodial crews at the theme parks get some of the profit. Wouldn't it be much better? Wouldn't it be better if, you know, the camera operators and the people who did the set design and who worked on help building the sets, the people who manage craft services, the makeup artists, what if they all got some of the profits? Wouldn't that be lovely? Instead of it all going to the top. But you can't have that in this system. And that's one of the reasons why I look at this and I'm just like, look, go on strike. Let them know who's boss. Look, if you guys want something entertaining, then just watch me read a book. I'll do that on here. You know, because these corporations are just sorry sacks of shit. Get out of here. That's what they are. And they just do not, they honestly, they just want your eyeballs on their shows and just keep paying for their streaming services so they can keep pulling money out of your pockets, even though they're not really entertaining you all that well.